The darkness of the wild. The night was cold, and the forest was endless. Dark shadows moved between the giant trees, and strange cries echoed far away. The alien girl stumbled through the thick grass, her body weak and her mind filled with fear. She had been left here to die, abandoned by her own people, cast away like broken stone. Her stomach twisted with hunger, and her lips were dry like sand. Every step was heavy, every breath felt like fire, and still, she forced herself forward. She could not stop, because stopping meant death. The wild was alive, but it was alive with danger. In the darkness, glowing eyes watched her, predators hiding, waiting for her to fall. She clutched the broken piece of wood in her hand, a poor weapon, but the only thing she had. The air smelled of damp earth and rot. The silence was heavy, broken only by the beating of her heart. She had been alone for days, maybe more. She could not remember. The nights blurred together, filled with terror, filled with running. Her once bright spirit was fading into despair. She whispered to herself, a broken voice in the empty wild. No one is coming for me. No one cares. Tears burned her eyes, but even they were dry. Her tribe had called her useless, a burden, and so they had thrown her to the forest. Her body shook, not only from cold, but from hopelessness. If she closed her eyes now, she thought, maybe the wild would take her quickly. Maybe it would be easier to let go. But then, something changed. Her ears caught a sound, faint but clear. Footsteps, slow, steady, moving through the grass. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. Were they hunters? Were they the same people who had abandoned her, returning to watch her suffer? Or was it something worse, a beast shaped like a man, waiting to tear her apart? Her heart pounded harder. The footsteps grew closer, crunching leaves, pressing earth. She wanted to hide, but her body had no strength left. Her legs gave way, and she fell against the roots of a tree, the broken wood slipping from her fingers. She could do nothing but wait for whatever fate was coming. The sound of the steps echoed louder, closer, until they were just beyond the tree line. The girl shut her eyes tight, whispering one last time, "If this is death, let it be quick." A shadow appeared, tall, broad, and strange. Not a beast, not her tribe, but something she had only heard stories of. It was a human. The figure stepped into the dim light of the forest moon, his boots sinking into the mud. He carried a pack over his shoulder and a weapon at his side. His clothes were torn from travel, but his face was calm, his eyes sharp and alive. The alien girl trembled, for she had been told humans were dangerous, ruthless, and selfish. Her people had warned her that humans never gave without taking. But now, here stood one before her, real, breathing, and strong. The human stopped when he saw her, his eyes narrowing as he took in her weak and broken form. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy, endless. The girl tried to speak, but her voice broke into a whisper. "Help me," she said, though she did not believe he would. Her hand reached out weakly, trembling in the cold air. The human did not move at first, and she thought he would leave her. But then, he took a slow step forward. His voice was deep but not cruel. "You are not safe here," he said, his tone more gentle than she had expected. He knelt beside her, pulling a flask from his pack. The girl's eyes widened when he held it out to her, offering water. Her lips shook as she drank, the liquid burning her dry throat but filling her with life again. She stared at him in disbelief, unable to understand. Why would a human give her kindness? The forest still growled around them, but in that moment, something inside her shifted. For days she had believed no one would come, that she was worthless, forgotten. But now, with every steady footstep of this human, she felt something she had not felt in so long. Hope. First glimpse of the human. The alien girl sat against the rough tree bark, her weak body trembling. Her mind was torn between fear and confusion. The human's presence felt unreal, like a vision born from hunger and exhaustion. She had heard only cruel tales about his kind, stories of fire and iron, stories of endless wars. But the man before her had given water, not pain, kindness, not cruelty. She watched him closely, afraid that at any moment he would reveal his true nature. The human studied her with quiet eyes, his expression unreadable. He did not rush, did not strike, did not mock her for being helpless. Instead, He placed his pack down slowly, as if to show he was not a threat. His movements were careful, steady, like a hunter who knew the wild too well. The girl could not decide if he was danger disguised or salvation unexpected. "You will not survive the night here," the human said, his voice calm. The alien girl flinched at his words, because they were true. Her body had already given up, her mind only half awake. She looked down at her thin arms, the bruises, the dirt covering her skin. She had been prepared to die, but now his words made her wonder if life was still possible. He took out a small wrapped bundle, opening it to reveal dried food. He tore a piece and held it toward her. She hesitated, her hand shaking. Could she trust this? Could she accept food from a human? Her people had told her never to take anything from them, for it always came with a price. But her hunger was stronger than her doubts. Slowly, she reached out and took it, biting carefully. The taste was plain, but to her it felt like the sweetest gift in the world. The human watched her eat, then nodded slightly. "You have strength left," he said. "But not much. We must move before night fully falls." The alien girl's eyes widened. "Move? Where?" she asked in a faint voice. The human glanced into the darkening forest, where distant howls rose like thunder. "Anywhere but here," he answered simply. He extended his hand toward her, open, waiting. The girl froze, her heart racing. His hand was strong, scarred, yet steady. It was not a hand of a captor, nor a hand raised to strike. It was the hand of someone offering choice. She had not been given a choice in years, not even when her tribe abandoned her. For a long moment, she stared at it, torn between instinct and hope. Finally, with trembling fingers, she placed her hand into his. Warmth spread through her arm, not just from his touch, but from the strange trust she felt rising inside. He pulled her gently to her feet, supporting her weak frame without judgment. For the first time, she did not feel like a burden. For the first time, she felt seen. The forest was darker now, shadows crawling between the roots. The human led the way, each step quiet but firm. She followed, leaning on him when her legs failed. The silence between them was heavy, yet not hostile. Every sound of the wild pressed against them, the hiss of insects, the cry of unseen creatures, the crack of branches in the wind. Still, with him walking ahead, she felt a strange safety. His footsteps were steady, and in their rhythm she found something she thought she had lost forever: hope. As they moved deeper into the unknown, the girl's thoughts returned to her people. They had abandoned her, left her to starve, and called her worthless. And yet, here was a stranger, of a race said to be merciless, risking time and energy to help her. Why? Why would a human care when even her own kind had not? Her eyes searched his face in the dim light, but he gave nothing away. He was silent, like the forest, but his silence was not cruel. It was the silence of someone who carried his own secrets. They reached a clearing where the moonlight touched the ground. The human stopped and lowered his pack, building a small fire with practiced skill. The flames rose, chasing away the darkness. The girl stared at the fire, warmth reaching her skin, easing her trembling. She whispered, half to herself, half to him, "Why are you helping me?" The human looked at her across the fire, his eyes reflecting the glow. For a moment, he said nothing, and she feared he would ignore her. Then he spoke softly, almost like a truth he did not want to admit. "Because I could not walk away, not this time." The girl blinked, confused, her heart heavy with questions. What did he mean? Not this time? What past haunted this human's steps? The fire crackled between them, and for the first time, she felt the weight of mystery shift. This man was not just a savior in the wild. He was something more, something hidden, and though she did not know it yet, his footsteps were about to change her fate forever. Struggle for survival. The fire burned low, casting faint light against the trees. The alien girl sat close to it, her arms wrapped around herself, feeling the warmth. The human had given her food and water, but sleep would not come easily. The wild never rested, and in the distance, the cries of predators reminded her how fragile life was. Still, beside him, she felt safer than she had in days, maybe in her whole life. The human sat opposite her, silent, sharpening his blade with slow, careful strokes. His eyes scanned the forest, always alert. She wondered if he ever rested, or if his strength came from something beyond her understanding. Every move he made was steady, practiced, like someone who had lived through many battles. He was not like the stories her people told, of wild humans who destroyed without thought. No, this man carried his violence like a tool, not a weapon of pride. The girl shivered when the wind swept through the clearing. The human glanced at her, then without a word, pulled a blanket from his pack and tossed it across the fire. She caught it with trembling hands, eyes wide with surprise. Her people had never shared comfort with her, not even in her own family. Why would a stranger, a human, do so? The thought made her chest ache in a way she could not explain. When the fire dimmed, the human spoke for the first time since they had stopped. "Tomorrow we move early," he said, his voice calm. "The wild grows worse the longer we stay." The girl nodded faintly, though her legs already felt too weak to walk. She wanted to ask where he was leading her, but the words would not leave her mouth. Instead, she whispered, "Well, will we live?" The human's eyes flickered toward her, steady and unshaken. "We will fight too," he said simply. Those words struck her heart harder than any promise could. Not "you will live," not "I will save you," but "we will fight too." He had tied her fate to his own, without hesitation. And for the first time in her life, she was not walking her path alone. Sleep finally pulled her down, though it was light and restless. In the middle of the night, she awoke to the human standing, blade drawn. His head turned toward the forest, listening. The girl froze, clutching the blanket tight. From the darkness came a low growl, deep and sharp. Glowing eyes appeared between the trees, moving closer. Her breath caught in her throat, fear flooding back. The human did not run. He stood tall, his weapon ready. The beast stepped into the firelight, its body massive, covered in scales and fur, teeth shining in the glow. It snarled, circling them, eyes locked on the weakest prey, the girl. Her body shook, but the human stepped forward, placing himself between her and the monster. The girl gasped, whispering, "You'll die." But he only answered, "Not tonight." The beast lunged, and the clearing exploded with sound. The human's blade flashed, striking against its hide. The monster roared, claws tearing the earth, fire scattering sparks into the air. The girl pressed against the tree, helpless, watching as the man fought with speed and power she could not believe. He dodged, struck, and moved with the grace of someone who had lived with danger for years. But even he was not untouched. Claws tore his arm, blood streaking his skin. Still, he did not fall. At last, with a final strike, he drove the blade into the creature's throat. The beast collapsed, thrashing once before lying still. The forest went silent again, save for the sound of his heavy breathing. The girl stared, heart pounding, unable to believe what she had seen. A human, bleeding, risking his life, fighting death itself. Not for glory, not for himself, but for her. He staggered, pulling the blade free, his arm dripping with blood. The girl ran to him without thinking, catching his weight as he swayed. "You're hurt," she cried softly, her hands trembling against his side. The man looked down at her, pain in his eyes but still calm. "I've been hurt before," he said, sitting heavily by the fire. She tore a strip of cloth from her own garment, pressing it against his wound. Her hands were clumsy, but she tried, her fear mixing with determination. You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. He gave a faint, tired smile. "And leave you? Alone in this wild? I would not." Her throat tightened, tears welling against her will. She turned her face away, ashamed of the weakness. But inside, a spark lit, a strange warmth that grew with every word, every action. This human was unlike anything she had been told, unlike anything she had expected. She did not understand him, but she knew one truth now. She was not worthless, not while someone was willing to fight for her. The fire burned brighter as she sat beside him, guarding his wounded side. For the first time, she was not the one saved. She was the one keeping watch. The wild howled in the distance, but inside the clearing, she felt something stronger than fear. Together, they had survived the night, and the struggle was only beginning. The secret of her past. The fire burned low, glowing red against the darkness. The alien girl sat near the wounded human, pressing cloth against his arm. His blood had slowed, but the mark of the beast remained, deep and cruel. She watched his face as he closed his eyes for a moment, resting against the tree. Even in pain, he did not complain. Even in weakness, he looked unbroken. Her hands trembled as she worked, because the silence around them was heavy. It pressed against her chest, filled with thoughts she had hidden for too long. The human had saved her life twice, and yet he did not ask why she had been alone in the wild. He had not demanded answers. He had not forced her to speak. But her heart was restless, because she knew he would not understand who she was until he heard the truth. She stared into the fire, voice low and shaking. "My people left me here," she whispered. The human opened his eyes slowly, looking at her with quiet focus. She swallowed hard, the words tasting bitter. "They said I was weak. They said I was a burden, and so they cast me into the wild to die." Her voice cracked, memories rushing like sharp stones. She saw the faces of her clan turning away, saw the cold eyes of her mother, saw the hand that pushed her out of the gates. Her heart tightened as she continued. "No one cried for me. No one fought for me. I was nothing to them." Her fingers dug into the cloth she held, her breath shaking. "I thought maybe they were right. Maybe I am nothing." The human listened without interrupting, his eyes steady in the firelight. The girl turned to him, her tears shining. "And yet, you," she whispered, "a stranger, a human, you did not leave me. Why?" The man did not answer immediately. He looked into the fire, his jaw tight, as though her words stirred something inside him. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but sharp. "Because I know what it is to be thrown away." Her breath caught, her eyes widening. The human did not meet her gaze. Instead, he stared into the flames, his scarred hand tightening around his blade. "Not by my people," he continued, "but by those I trusted. I fought for them, bled for them, and still, they left me behind. They decided my life had no worth." His voice grew hard, though controlled. "So I do not walk away from those who are abandoned, not anymore." The girl's heart pounded at his words, because for the first time, she felt something she never thought possible. Connection. They were different, worlds apart, and yet they shared the same wound. Both had been cast aside. Both had been told they were worthless. But in this moment, sitting together in the wild, they were no longer alone. The fire flickered, and the girl leaned closer, her voice trembling but strong. "Then let me fight too," she said. The human looked at her, surprised. Her hands tightened into fists. "I am not useless. Not anymore. I want to stand. I want to live." A faint smile touched his lips, though his eyes were still shadowed with pain. "Then stand," he said simply, "and live." The girl nodded, determination sparking inside her. She had never been given purpose, never been given a chance to prove herself. Now, beside this human, she felt the weight of chains breaking. Her tribe's words still haunted her, but they no longer defined her. His footsteps had given her hope, but his trust gave her strength. The night passed slowly, filled with silence, but not empty silence. It was a silence of healing, of unspoken understanding. When dawn came, the fire burned to ash, and the forest awoke with strange cries. The human rose carefully, his arm bound with cloth, his body still strong despite the wound. He glanced at her, his eyes sharp but steady. "Can you walk?" he asked. The girl stood, her legs shaking but firm. "Yes," she said, "I can walk." Her voice was soft, but it carried a strength she had not felt before. The human nodded once, then turned to lead the way. She followed, not as a helpless burden, but as someone ready to fight. The wild was still cruel, still filled with dangers unseen. But now, when she heard the human's footsteps ahead of her, she no longer felt fear. Each step was a promise, not just of survival, but of something greater. She did not know where the path would end, but she knew this. She was no longer trapped in despair. She was no longer nothing. She was walking toward a future, and with every step, hope grew brighter. The trial of the wild. The morning came cold and sharp, mist curling between the trees. The alien girl walked beside the human, her legs weak but steadier than before. Each step echoed with the rhythm of survival, each breath a promise that she would not fall again. The human moved ahead with careful eyes, scanning the shadows for danger. His wound was bound, but his steps were slower than the night before. The forest seemed alive with new hunger. Birds screeched high above, and the rustle of unseen creatures followed them with every move. The girl felt the weight of eyes in the darkness, but this time she did not tremble as before. She carried a long branch sharpened at one end, not a true weapon, but more than nothing. Her grip was tight, her heart steady. By midday, they reached a stretch of swamp, thick with fog and foul air. The human stopped, lowering his pack. "This place is dangerous," he said, his voice low. "Stay close, do not wander." The girl nodded, her eyes scanning the shifting mist. The ground squelched beneath their feet, water rising with each step. The air was heavy with silence, until the silence broke. A howl tore through the swamp, deep and bone-shaking. The girl froze, her blood turning cold. The human raised his weapon, eyes narrowing. From the fog, shadows moved, massive shapes circling them. Scales glistened under faint light, jaws dripping with slime. Predators of the swamp, drawn by the scent of blood. "Run," the human ordered, his voice sharp. But the girl hesitated, fear locking her legs. The first beast lunged from the water, snapping its teeth. The human slashed, driving it back, mud spraying in the air. "Go," he shouted, his voice carrying command. The girl finally moved, her body stumbling through the swamp. But even as she ran, she looked back, her heart pounding with dread. The human fought like fire against the beasts, his blade flashing in the mist. He cut, dodged, and struck, each movement fierce. But there were too many, their scales deflecting some blows, their weight pressing harder. The girl's breath caught when one creature's tail struck him, sending him crashing into the mud. He staggered, struggling to rise, blood staining the water. For a moment, fear swallowed her. She could keep running and maybe live, or turn back and die with him. Her mind screamed to run, but her heart would not let her. She spun, clutching her sharpened branch. Her legs shook, but she charged back toward the beasts, her voice breaking into a desperate cry. The nearest predator turned toward her, jaws wide. She drove the branch forward with all her strength, the tip piercing into its soft throat. The creature screeched, thrashing, sinking back into the swamp. The human's eyes widened as he saw her stand, her small frame against the monster's. She pulled the branch free, her arms trembling but her eyes fierce. Another beast lunged, and this time she moved faster, rolling aside, striking at its flank. Her strike was not perfect, but it was enough to draw blood. The swamp water turned red, the beasts hissing in rage. The human rose again, his strength returning with fury. Together, they fought, his blade striking true while her branch struck wild but brave. For the first time, she was not just the one being protected. For the first time, she was protecting too. Her fear had not vanished, but it had been burned into courage. At last, the beasts retreated, sinking back into the swamp, their howls fading into the mist. The girl collapsed to her knees, chest heaving, sweat dripping from her brow. Her branch was broken, splintered from the struggle. The human moved to her side, gripping her arm, pulling her back to her feet. "You stood," he said, his voice quiet but firm. She met his eyes, her own wide with disbelief. I fought," she whispered, still breathless. "You did," he answered, his gaze steady. "And you lived." Her chest tightened, not from fear, but from something deeper. All her life she had been told she was useless, too weak, too fragile. But now, her hands were bloodied, her body trembling from battle, and she had stood. She had faced the wild and struck back. And the human had seen it, had witnessed her strength. The swamp fell silent again, the mist curling around them. The human sheathed his blade, though his body was weary. He looked at her as though seeing her differently now, not as a fragile burden, but as someone with fire. And she felt it too. She was no longer only surviving because of him. She was surviving with him. They walked on, step by step through the swamp. The human's footsteps steady, the girl's lighter but stronger than before. The trial of the wild had nearly broken them, but it had also forged something new. Not just trust, but a bond of survival. She no longer walked in his shadow, she walked beside him. The mist parted slowly, revealing the trees beyond. The girl tightened her grip on the broken branch, her eyes hard. The wild would not stop testing them, but she no longer feared its trials. For every beast that came, for every shadow that hunted, she knew the truth. She was not alone, and now, she would never be again. Rescue or doom. The swamp was left behind, But the forest ahead grew stranger. The trees twisted into unnatural shapes, their roots rising like claws. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the call of unseen birds. The alien girl walked close to the human, her broken branch still in hand. Her steps were steady, yet her heart raced with unease. As the sun fell low, they reached a clearing. There, half buried in vines and moss, stood the ruins of stone. Tall pillars cracked by time, walls covered in alien carvings, glowing faintly in the dusk. The girl gasped, her eyes wide. "These are the old places," she whispered. "My people feared them. They said only the cursed entered." The human stepped forward, his eyes sharp as he studied the markings. "They are not cursed," he said, his voice low. "They are signals, places where ships once landed." The girl stared at him, confusion rising. "Ships? Then there could be a way out." The human nodded slightly. "Maybe, if the signal still works, if the power still lives." Hope flickered inside her, brighter than ever before. But hope never came alone. From the shadows of the ruins, a sound rose, deep, grinding, like stone breaking. The ground shook beneath their feet, dust falling from the cracked walls. The girl clutched her branch tighter, fear flooding back. "What is that?" she whispered. The answer came with a roar. From beneath the ruins crawled monstrous shapes, their bodies made of stone and flesh, eyes burning with red fire. Guardians of the ruins, born to kill whatever dared to approach. The girl's breath broke, terror freezing her limbs. The human stepped in front of her, blade drawn, his voice calm even as the ground trembled. "Stay behind me." The first guardian lunged, its massive arms crushing the ground. The human struck, sparks flying as his blade clashed against stone. The force threw him back, but he rolled to his feet, striking again with fierce precision. The girl watched, her heart pounding. But more guardians rose, surrounding them, their roars shaking the air. Panic surged in her chest, the urge to run pulling at her legs. But then she remembered the swamp, the moment she had turned back instead of fleeing. She remembered her own voice saying, "I want to stand, I want to live." Her grip on the broken branch tightened, her fear burning into courage. She would not abandon him, not now, not ever. The human fought with strength, but his wound slowed him. One guardian struck him across the chest, throwing him against the stone wall. He gasped, blood staining his side, yet he rose again, blade shaking but unbroken. The girl cried out, rushing to his side. "No!" she screamed, her voice raw. She stood before him, her small frame facing the towering guardians. For a moment, she felt the same worthlessness her tribe had thrown upon her. But then she heard his voice, low and steady despite the pain. "You are not nothing." Those words lit fire in her soul. She raised the broken branch high, screaming as she charged. The guardian swung down, but she leapt aside, driving the sharp point into the glowing mark on its chest. The creature shrieked, its body cracking, crumbling into shards. Her breath came in gasps, but her eyes burned with determination. The human pushed forward beside her, striking another with his blade. Together, they fought not as protector and burden, but as two standing as one. The battle raged, the ruins shaking with every strike. The girl moved faster than she ever thought she could. Her fear turned into fury, her weakness into strength. The human's blade shone with firelight, his body moving with fierce will. And at last, the final guardian fell, shattering into dust, its roar fading into silence. The ruins stood still once more, the night settling around them. The girl fell to her knees, chest heaving, her hands trembling from the fight. The human lowered his blade, blood dripping, his body shaking from exhaustion. He staggered, and she rushed to catch him, her arms wrapping around his side. "Don't you fall," she whispered, tears burning her eyes. "Don't you dare fall now." The human looked down at her, his face pale, but his eyes alive. "I will not," he said, his voice rough but certain. "You fought," he added, a faint smile breaking through his pain. "You saved me." Her throat tightened, her tears falling. For so long, she had begged for someone to see her, to believe she was more than nothing. And now, here in the ruins, covered in blood and dust, she had proven it. Not to her tribe, but to herself. She was not useless, she was not weak. She had stood, she had fought, and she had lived. The ruins glowed faintly, ancient symbols humming with power. The human leaned against her, his hand on the wall. Maybe, he whispered, just maybe, this place still carries hope. The girl looked at him, then at the glowing walls, her heart pounding with something new. Not just survival, not just fear, but belief. Whatever came next, she knew they would face it together. And nothing in the wild, no tribe, no beast, no stone guardian, would ever take that away. A new dawn. The ruins were silent after the battle. Stone dust floated in the air, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The alien girl sat beside the human, her hands still shaking, her heart pounding from what they had faced. The guardians were gone, broken into shards, but their presence still lingered like shadows in her mind. She looked at him, wounded but alive, his strength unbroken even in exhaustion. He leaned against the ancient wall, his breath heavy, his hand pressing the cloth against his side. Yet his eyes were sharp, watching the symbols that pulsed faintly with hidden power. The girl touched the wall with trembling fingers, feeling the faint hum under the stone. "It is alive," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "The signal, it still breathes." The human gave a slow nod. "Then there may be a way out," he said quietly. The girl's chest filled with hope, a light brighter than any fire. For the first time, she imagined life beyond this wild, life beyond fear. But more than freedom, she realized something else. She did not want to face that life alone. She looked at him, her eyes burning with unspoken words. "You saved me," she said softly. Again and again, when you had no reason to. The human met her gaze, his face unreadable. "You saved me too," he answered. "I would not be standing if you had not fought beside me." The girl lowered her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "No one ever said that to me," she whispered. "No one ever called me strong." The human reached out, his hand resting on her shoulder, steady and warm. "You are," he said, his voice low but certain. "Do not let their lies follow you. You are more than they ever saw." Her breath caught, her chest tight with emotion. She had carried the weight of rejection, the chains of worthlessness, for so long. But here, in the ruins of the old world, a stranger's footsteps had shattered those chains. She was no longer the girl left to die. She was the girl who lived, who fought, who was seen. The night passed slowly, the ruins glowing like embers. When the first light of dawn touched the horizon, the girl rose, looking out at the forest beyond. The wild was still vast, still dangerous, but it no longer felt like a cage. The human stepped beside her, his arm bound, his body scarred, but his presence steady. Together they looked at the rising sun, gold breaking through the mist. For the girl, the sunrise was more than light. It was rebirth, it was proof that after darkness, there could be warmth. She turned to him, her voice trembling but clear. "When I heard your footsteps, I thought they were the sound of death," she whispered, "but they were hope." The human gave a faint smile, the first true smile she had seen on his face. "Then let us keep walking," he said. "Hope is not meant to stay still." They gathered what little they had, leaving the ruins behind. The forest still waited, with its dangers, its trials, its endless shadows. But their footsteps were steady, side by side, not as strangers, not as burden and protector, but as companions bound by survival, by courage, by something deeper. The girl's heart no longer whispered of despair. It beat with strength, each step echoing with promise. She no longer feared the wild, for she had found her place within it, not alone, but beside him, not worthless, but alive with meaning. The sun climbed higher, washing the world in light. The girl closed her eyes for a moment, breathing the air of a new day. She had been trapped, she had been desperate, but now she walked free. And with each human step beside her, she carried the truth. She was not lost, not abandoned, not forgotten. She had been given hope, and she had become hope. The wild could not take that away, no darkness could. For as long as their footsteps moved forward, there would always be light. And so, together, they walked into the dawn, into a future unknown but theirs to claim.